All right, welcome back. All right, today, week 2, part 2, color. Dealing with color. Let's see, something just pop up. Dealing with color. So we did 4. Now we're on the color. We're going to go over defining color. We're going to do our color lecture. I'm going to talk about the color project and your design practice for today. So without further ado, let's jump in and learn some color basics or terminology, definitions, whatever you want to call it. Let's start here. All right, basics. Let's look at the basics here. We got our color wheel. It's generally termed as a color wheel. You can call it what you want, but it is just generally known as a color wheel, and it's everything under white light makes up the color wheel. And then we go around and it ROYGBV, Roy G. Biv, purple is violet. We all know this. It's the standard color wheel. But let's start to define it a bit more. These break it down into primary and complementary. So, or sometimes people call it secondary, but it's actually complementary. So you have a primary colors cannot be made by any means. They just exist. Yellow, you can't combine something and something to make yellow. You cannot combine something and something to make blue, and you cannot combine something and something to make red. Those are called primary colors, and that's the reason why. There's no way to it just exists. Yellow just exists. It is what it is. But the complementary color, going down here, is a mix. Blue complementary and red's complementary are all mixes. And the mixes for yellow, it's blue and red make purple. And that's the complementary, the opposite color. So yellow's opposite is purple. Red's opposite is green. So we're going right across the street there, and it's yellow plus blue equals green. I hope we all know that from grade school. And then blue opposite or complementary is orange, which is yellow plus red equals orange. There we go. Primary and complementary. So that's how we start to define the colors. Now we can go into groupings of colors. And this comes into play when we're designing. All the next things are about designing and using the color. Instead of just throwing out a rainbow and just doing all I'll just say willy-nilly, we can start to break and define groupings of colors, which you'll talk about later on in the book. I don't think the book matches up with this one, but in your assignment, you're going to do it. And it's something that we're going to do, you're going to do in designing. It's a smart way to design. So the first one is triads. And that's 3 colors across from each other in a triangle. Hence the reason triad. It's 3s, and I have it broken down. You can see the yellow triangle is pointing at this one, and this one, which means it's a triad. So yellow, blue, and red create a triad of color. If we look at the cyan triangle, it's green, purple, and orange. And if we looked at what we just talked about, the primary triad has a complementary triad, which is green, purple, and orange. And then we can break that down even further if we look at this triangle and we're, splitting it up. Each time we split it up into a 3. And then so you could have a design that uses, say, this light orange, this teal green, and this reddish purple. And if you used all 3 of those in your design, you would be using a triad of colors that work together. And then, we have that last one, which is here, here, and here. So that's a triad. All kind of across. The best way I can say is across from each other. It's not directly across, but it makes that equilateral triangle of colors on the color wheel to grab from. So that's a triad. Analogous. Analogous colors. It's a grouping of colors next to each other on the color wheel. So they all are very close to each other. So that's why I have this section sectioned off. It's usually 4 to 5. We wouldn't be like necessarily splitting down the middle. That's a little bit much. But if you do a design and you do an analogous design, so all the colors kind of match each other, that's what we're talking about. And it can go any grouping. So I could split that. Let's go and undo. I could move that anywhere I want. So if I was like, oh, I'll do green and I'll take these 4 colors. These are now analogous. This grouping of colors is directly correlated to each other on the color wheel. So I could do a design that included green to orange, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I use those as my colors. And this shifts. This is like a clock that can shift anywhere on the color wheel. I'm trying to think if I can do it. Oh, it doesn't let me rotate. I can only move it. But you should understand what I mean by that. Like, again, if I wanted blue, I can either go blue to green here, or what if I do this blue to the reddish here? So all next to each other, 4 to 5 colors. You wouldn't go over 5. And that's analogous, right next to each other on the color wheel. We call that analogous. Now we can split our colors up as well into warm and cool colors. Warm colors, they're defined because it's how it makes us feel. You know what I mean? So if you think red is hot, orange is warm, yellow is the sun, you know, like these are all what we define as warm colors. And then we have the cool colors, which is, you know, blue is cold, you know, purple, you know, like all these kind of green, think of the green grass, soft, cool green grass, you know, like that's the feeling we get. Now you can dance. This is I'll call it the primary definition of warm and cool. But I can create colors within this color wheel that I would say, like, I can create like an orange that is a little bit on the cool side. I can cool it down. So you can break these down even more if you want. It's not difficult, but you can, you know, you can make a cool yellow. It's a little bit more on the green than it is over here. And then so we'd call it a cool yellow. You know, or if I took a green and I added just a little bit of more red to it, I could start to create like a warmer green. And that's what we mean by that. But for major definition, and when we're talking about, you know, color palettes, and we'll say stuff like, oh, use a cool color palette. You know, not cool like it's rad, but like cool color palette because it fits the client. The client likes that cool color palette. All right, great. We'll use blues and greens for the design then, instead of reds and oranges, which doesn't fit. That's a warm color palette, might not fit the client. Monochromatic. Mono, single, one. That's it. So monochromatic is simply this. It's yellow from 100% saturation to 0% saturation. These are transparent because what I'm simply doing is, you can see the transparency here. What I'm simply doing is, this is 100% pure pigment. This next one down is 90% pure pigment and 10% nothing. And that's why it's transparent. And then it goes down. These are actually 80, 60, 40, 20 in all actuality. But it's monochromatic. Nothing else is added to this color. So it goes from the deepest of that color to what I'd say pure white, but we're going to get into that next with tints, tones, and shades. But monochromatic is just simply pigment with nothing else added. And that if you were to hold these up, they would be slightly transparent, as if it was a piece of glass, as the pigment reduced to create a monochromatic system. And I'll show you that. Like, we have examples of that working with monochromatic. It can be quite, you to think like, only one color, there's such limitations. Not really. You can do a lot. And it's a way of printing. It's a way of designing. You will find in your design career that not everything is always just, we use the color of the rainbow everywhere. There's times when you want to design and you're only going to use 2 colors and tints, tones, and shades of those colors, because it makes the piece more dramatic. Like, not everything is always a rainbow and full color. Like, you can do some really cool stuff, especially now, like in Photoshop, easy doing these duotones and stuff like that. 2 colors mixed only, and use that as your full design, like only 2 colors. So you get to some really rad stuff. All right, tint, adding white to a hue. A hue is also another name for a color. We say hue. Do you need to? Not all the time. You know, it is what it is. But here, I started with 100% yellow. Down here, let's say it's 20% yellow and 80% white. So I added white. I'm simply adding white as it goes down. So it's no longer transparent, but we're adding white to the color to create a tint. What's the tint of the color? It's from solid color to a white version of the color. Nothing else in there. And I'm going to teach you today how to make a tint in Illustrator. It's called a spot color, and you'll use that within your assignment. And it's really great to know. I'll teach it a couple times throughout this quarter. Tone. Tone is we're adding gray. Gray, to me, is notified as 50% black, 50% white. That's a gray. So if I take this gray and I take yellow, I'm slowly adding gray to it. So this is 100% yellow, and this is 100% gray. And that's walking it down. So just like tint, but we do it with gray, and we call that a tone. Sometimes people double up on the tone and shade, and they kind of call it the same thing. Like, they'll say, oh, can you tone it down? And they actually mean add black to it, you know, bring down the color. But you can see here the difference. And then we're going to get to shade, which is adding black. So gray is a color. See how chalky it kind of gets? It gets chalky in this area. But if you just add simply black, it stays vibrant because we're only adding black. There's no white to kind of make it what I call make it look chalky color. And again, 100% here, and this is actually ending at 80 when I said 100, and the other ones it's probably 80% black instead of going to pure black. And that's adding a shade. So to go through these, we have just your standard color wheel. And we know our colors, hopefully. We have our primary, yellow, blue, red, and our complementary, orange, green, purple. Every color has a complementary color within the color wheel. We can break down colors into groupings like triads, analogous, and cool and warm. And then we can change the color. We can define the color by itself, monochromatic, or by starting to add white, gray, or black to the color and naming those tints, tones, and shades. So there's your color lecture. Let's look at some color examples and talk about how we use color, why we use color, and some significance in the color. More definition, color refers to the visual perception resulting from the way an object interacts with white light and the human eye. And it doesn't always have to be white light. I said white light. White light is the purest, like the sun is 100% white. And then how do things reflect? Things look different if you use a green light, if you use a blue light, you know, if you change the color of the light, because we can all do that now with all our smart our smart light bulbs, it changes the way everything else looks down the line. So you got to kind of keep that in mind. As we talked about hue, kind of the name of a color, red, blue, green. Value is another way to talk about that. The lightness or darkness of a color is also, we talk about its value. And then saturation is the purity. How pure is that color? How much pigment is in there? And I use pigment because to me, pigment is like a physical object rather than talking about light. And generally, when you're looking at your screen, you're looking at light. But if you're looking at a printed piece, there is literally a pigment, a molecule of color on a printed sheet. So that's kind of like when I talk about things, I generally talk about pigments. We have seen the color wheel. It organizes the color in that, circle. You can break it down into insane amounts. As you know, like the color wheel used in our programs, escalates to millions of colors when we open up that properties and I go to fill and I go to, do I want the palette? Yeah, here, down here. I believe this section right here, and I don't remember offhand, it's like 1.6 million colors can be created from the digital color palette, going from, white to black through every color rendition. It's 1.6 million or something like that. We have a lot of colors to choose from, eh? We went through the color schemes, monochromatic, single color, analogous, colors that are adjacent to each other, or next to each other on that color wheel. Those 4. Complementary, across the street from each other, I guess is the best way to say it. And triadic, again, kind of like 3 across the street, kitty corner. Color can be used for emphasis and focal point. It can bring a piece together in harmony and unity if the color scheme is all like warm or all cool, like I talked about earlier. And it can create mood and emotion, of course. You have red. We're coming up on Halloween. There's a great one right there. Like we're talking Halloween. Halloween has its baseline colors, green, black, orange, and purple. And when we see that, we think Halloween. And that creates mood and emotion for us because, like you love or hate Halloween, maybe, whatever that may be. So that's how you create mood and emotion. There's a cultural significance to colors as well. So when you're designing, if you're designing for a certain client, you need to make sure if you're designing for a cultural, system other than your own, you have to make sure stuff. Like, for instance, red may symbolize luck and prosperity in some cultures, while it represents danger in others. So you have to make sure you're using the right color for the right people at the right times. And it's just a cultural norm. It's not a big deal. You just make sure, again, do you want to use red? How are you using red and who's it going to? Colors are used in branding. So you will start to learn about this a little bit more. Every one of your favorite brands, from McDonald's and Coke and what you name it, Nike, all of them, Apple, all of them, they have specific colors that they use, and those colors only. And they have what's called a brand Bible or brand guidebook, and it says, if you're going to design for us, designer, this is our colors, and you do not use any colors but these colors because these are our corporate colors. And yes, all brands have corporate colors that they use specifically for their brand. And that's what you use when you work for them. And then balance and contrast, the color, distributing the color and considering contrast between colors, because you can have colors that if they're next to each other, sometimes if you put red and green next to each other or in it, they vibrate, it's called. It looks like there's a funny line, and it can really mess with things and look good or look bad, depends. So let's check out some examples. We talk about focal point, all kind of like black and white, and then you have this big, sun right in the middle with this flame, which is flaming airplane coming up, but it's also sometimes somewhat referencing ink, from a Japanese brush, but just so significant in this poster to just be so bold, to be like, it's all going to be black and white, and we're just going to add in this, one pop blend of yellow to red. And of course it's in here because it's coming out of there. But again, these blendings are almost matching perfectly from here to here. It's really nicely done. And again, this shows like not every piece that you ever do has to be 100% all color all the time. And that gets boring after a while. People just see the same thing. Like, you challenge yourself to like make a significance when you do a design, to do something like, I'm going to make everything black and white, but only make certain parts red because it's for Halloween or something like that. I'll bring up Halloween probably like 6 more times today. Just to let you know. All right, this is Nike poster. Let's shift this over. Super cool. And I love that they didn't do like kind of average colors. The yellow is average, but they use like the cyan and a magenta and a green. Like, they used a lot of colors, but they use the offset of those colors, and it works in the way that you read it. So orange is your background. Nike Marathoner is like the news, like that's the brightest part. The pink is 1, 2, 3. Like, it's signified here, and then it's redone down here. And like, these are complementary, probably on the color wheel. This is maybe the purple and yellow a little bit, but they're kind of close. And then you have these spots of green, like really just nicely done. A lot of color on it. There's some splashes down here, but they broke it out. It's not just a rainbow of colors going down. They thought about each element and which color that element should be and where it should have like somebody else joining in. So it's Nike Marathoner, the 1, 2, 3, signifying down here again. And then we have the logo, we have breaking tape, April 2011. And that's in the cyan as well. And we use something, it's called the grouping of 3s. So there's cyan, 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 pink, or magenta, magenta, magenta down here. We have green, green, green down there. And I have part of the poster cut off, but we do have a 1, 2, and 3 for that. So there's always just a kind of like a fun design factoid that like you try to design in 3s. It makes an interesting layout. This piece for saving animals, the reason I have it in here, it's a good mix of like cool and warm and cool next to each other, and how it sets off, how having a warm color next to a cool color can set things off. If we look right here, there's this general shape of maybe like an elephant. I'll zoom in a little bit more. And it's warm, and then we put the cool color next to it of this like panther or tiger or something like that. And then we offset again, and then we have another like warm color here. So it's warm, cool, but it even goes down to here. There's, elephant to panther to like some elk to another animal down here, but we're just playing with that and setting it off by doing warm to cools. And here it's set off, not necessarily warm to cool, though that is like that purple next to that blue makes it feel warm. But here we have just dark to light, dark purple to a light purple offsets that as well down here. So it's a fun mix of seeing how you can play with those colors and not necessarily like being pure with them, but putting them next to each other to offset and show off like hidden features within the design. Here we just have a cool, I'd almost call this like a triadic experimentation in oiliness. It looks like the oil spill, and it's just coming down. And it's just kind of a wondrous feeling of these colors and the way they kind of come down and tell us about what's going on down here. You know, we flow in, we're flowing through this piece to come down to, you know, the highlight what it's all about. And it works really well, and the colors work well together. It seems like there's a rainbow of colors in here, but there's really not a rainbow of colors. There's, you know, teal, orange, and magenta. And then it's those three colors mixed with black, and it's maybe some white in there. Just really nice the way those all work together and figuring out and showing different color samplings that you can do with a piece. And good old Woodstock. I just like this. I love this. This I'm showing you too for twofold. And I want you guys to get in the mode, in the idea of this. And when we start doing designs from here on out, as if you look at this piece, there's no black except for this. But they didn't outline the cartoony figures in black. And I want you to start thinking about that when we work on our projects. The programs that we use immediately give us black outlines. And I've mentioned this with some of the other things that we've done with form and whatnot, where you don't need to have black outlines on stuff. Look how great this looks with the contrasting, just the red to the white. If you had a black outline, this wouldn't just wouldn't look as nice. And so why use black if you don't need to use black? I think that's a big one for me. Let's see if I can do it. Trying to show like what it would look like if we kind of did that. It changes like the whole feel of it, and it's not as nice, you know, if everything has a black outline around it. I think it's so much more pure. I make a joke, and I'll make this joke later on, that it's like, don't worry, the color will not fall out if there's no border around it. We don't need that border, that heavy-handedness. Like, the color will stay where it's at. It's not gonna, you know, if I don't have a border, it's not gonna be like, oh, the color dripped out. No, start to design, start to think about like, why am I adding? It's an element, right? It's the very first line. Do I need to add that element line to the design? Absolutely not. Look how great it looks without it. If I click on the select, you know, it looks so much better without this on it. Just makes it heavy and dark. Here it's not light and airy. So that's color. Let's jump into some of our assignments here. All right. Do the two. So color project first. As we know, we scroll down, we find the color project. I'm going to download that file. I'm going to go open it in my Finder. I'm going to switch screens here. Now you're going to create some basic designs. You can be real basic, fun geometric stuff. But what I want you to do is have some fun here and play around and fill that square and play with shapes, play with formations. These I just simply did very quickly. The cool one about this that I like to show up, it looks like it's got a gradient. Hey, doesn't it? It looks like it's gradient. It's not. This is 100% yellow, and this is 10% yellow. This is 100% purple. This is 10% purple. But the way that I just stacked them, it makes it look like there's a gradation there, and that they're blending. Like it's a weird, and it's an optical illusion just done with solid colors. So it's pretty cool what you can do. Like, you know, if I pull that out, you can totally see like there is no gradation in there, but when it's set up, it totally looks like there's somebody put like a filter right there. And these are just squares. Squares put on top of squares. Here are just some triangles, you know, just playing around. So I want you to do a complementary composition, a triad, analogous, 4 colors next to each other on the color wheel, a cool composition, blues, greens, and the blue purples, a warm composition, you know, yellow, reds, and oranges. Have some fun, you know, like these are, you can go wild. And monochromatic. Here's how to do a monochromatic. I'm just going to draw, excuse me, a basic shape to get started. All right. I'm going to go to properties and fill. So, and I'm going to start here on the swatches, and I'm going to say like red. Just go basic red. All right. This is their basic red. Now, if I wanted to make a monochromatic and I copy this over, the way I do red is not by trying to go to the color wheel and then like, oh, I like move these down. Like each time I move those down, it's going to end up not being the perfect monochromatic composition. What you want to do is make a spot color, and it takes 1 minute. I have my starter color, okay? Perfect. I'm going to click on fill, but then I'm going to click here. This is called spot colors. Now I'm going to click the plus, and you can name this whatever you want. Red trial. All right? Because you can name these. You're making your own color. And here's the one. Here's the one. Pay attention. Color type. All right? I'm going to go from process to spot. And I'm going to hit OK. Now I want you to watch right here. It's going to show up. Boop. Oh, it showed up here. Sometimes it shows up in weird spots. Sorry about that. But you can see that there's a little dot. That dot means it's a spot color. So when I click on this and I go here and I click on this and then go to the palette, I can choose from pure white to 100% of that red. And it's a perfect monochromatic design. And that's how I did that other one. So if I copy this and I make a bunch of these, so that's 100, then I go here and I can just type in 80, and I know that's perfectly 80. Do this one. Let's do 60, and I'll do 40. Now I'm going to do this again. So this is a perfect monochromatic setup. Let's do it one more time. I'm just going to create a shape. It just helps me as a designer to just start with something. And then I'm going to go, and you can mix and match your own color. You can do whatever. I'll do this fluorescent green, right? So I have a starter. I'm going to go to swatches plus, I'll call it super green. Go from process color to spot color, hit OK. This is now a spot color. I can see it's there, it's a spot. And if I make another one, I go to this, click on that, and now I go to the palette, not the swatch, but I go to the palette. It says super green, and I'll type in like 60 for that one, and double click. It's already open, and I can type 30 for that one. Perfectly monochromatic. Boom, boom, boom. That's how you do that. It's really good to know how to do that. Just for general designing. Perfect designs. That's how you do it. So that is the project. So make some really cool designs. Do whatever you want. You know, have some fun. That's what it's about, having fun. All right. Design practice. I'm going to go to start attempt. And I'm going to scroll down. Oh, that scroll doesn't work. CP Pinelli's. That's how you say your name. CP Pinelli's. I'm going to download the file. It is a zipped file. So like we've talked in the past, and I mentioned each time, let me go grab it so it's on the screen. All right. If you have a PC, you will right click and extract all, and then go to the new folder it created and open it from there. If you're on a Mac, you can double click and then it opens up this folder. Here's the CP Pinelli's. It's an InDesign file, INDD. We will be going back and forth. You're learning both programs, and it's good to know. I've never used the programs before. Doesn't matter. You're doing simple stuff, and you need to become familiar because these are the 3 programs you're hopefully going to use the rest of your career. So I'm going to double click on CP Pinelli's. And as you can see, just like the other ones, it's got a link. And just like earlier on Tuesday, this file is missing some pieces, and you have to place them in. So I'm going to zoom out, and what it's missing is the 3 examples. So you can just stay with this selection tool. We're going to use the selection tool and something called the free transform tool. So these are the 2 tools we're going to be using the most. Just like in all the other programs, there's layers, and I want you to lock the layers you don't use to avoid confusion. And we need to bring in those examples. So the examples are in the links file. So I'm going to go to File, Place, and I'm going to go to CP Pinelli's, and I'm going to go to Links, and I just need these 3 examples. Just like the Illustrator, it's almost exactly the same, but there are some differences with resizing that I want to teach you. So again, it's got the big number 3 there. It means I have 3 images kind of locked in this little pointer, and I'm going to click 1, 2, and 3. All right, and they're all different sizes. Now I'm going to take this biggest one, got it, dude, and move this over. I'm going to take this one and like move it over. These can be smaller, of course, but you don't use this tool to make it smaller. If you do that, what's going to happen is you are going to crop the image. What you want to use is the free transform tool. It's got the arrow and it's got these little things, and I'm just going to make sure I click on it, or it's to type the letter E. Now I am on that tool. I can pull from the corner and make it smaller, but you must hold down Shift because you want to constrain the image. We never, as designers, stretch images or fonts. We do not stretch fonts. You want a font to fit, you change the size of it, you do not stretch it. It's a very important lesson. I've mentioned it to one person in the an assignment, and you'll have assignments coming up where you never adjust the text. You don't squish text, you don't squish images. The reason being, is, we talk about that, is if that's not how that piece looks, it's stretched. Why is she so tall? Well, I just wanted to fit in that area. That's not, then we crop things. But we always hold the Shift key in Illustrator and InDesign. In Photoshop, you do not hold the Shift key to constrain an image. I have no clue as to why Adobe has that one reversal. It's so dumb. You know what I mean? It's so dumb. So we're going to make sure that these are lined up. We're looking for perfection. Make sure you zoom in. I want these perfectly aligned with each other. I want them exactly the same height. So you go back and everything clicks in. Just like before, you'll feel like a little pop click, like, okay, there, it's in where it should be. And then I'm going to move over and I'm going to get this one lined up. They're all lined up. And I'm going to probably grab both and make them both bigger because it's not quite to the edge. So then I can grab both of these, use that transform tool, and just pull them both. It's all about exactness. You start being exact now in your career, and it'll help you tons later on. If I call it like sloppy designers that stay sloppy end up always being sloppy, and you know what it ends up doing? You end up spending hours correcting for sloppiness instead of just doing it precisely the first time. And again, I just grab that, I move it around with this, right? And again, if you grab by that middle, that hand shows up, stop. Like that hand should be like, unless you're moving the image within its bounding box, that hand should be like, stop what you're doing. Make sure you grab over here to move. So you use one tool. I use one tool to move and one tool to resize. And then we just make it that size. Then I'm going to zoom out, and the rest should all fall into place. I'm going to unlock everything. I can move the text in. The text should just fall right in. I'm going to use my arrow key to push it up, get it perfectly centered there. I can move her into the corner. Make sure it's perfectly in that corner. Move the name in. The name should drop right in. And then finally the background. And the background goes all the way out to the bleed marks, as that's proper design etiquette. And there we have it. And then again, for InDesign, Illustrator is save as, InDesign is export as. Two different programs, two different ways to do it. So I go to File, Export. Down here, I want a Adobe Print PDF. Hit save, high quality, great. I'm gonna make sure none of these, I want the marks and bleeds. Nothing is marked here, that's good. Go back to general, and then always just view PDF after exporting is a great way to double check that your work looks perfect before turning it in. And there you go. Any questions, comments, or concerns about today's lessons? All right, great. You know how to get a hold of me. You know how to use the midweek review. Use it. Some people have started to use it. It's a great way to just double check instead of finding out in the assignment that something was wrong. You have time, you got until next week, Tuesday. Hit me up. Hey, is this correct? Sure. Do this, adjust that. Awesome. I will see you on the discussion boards and talk to you live next week, Tuesday. Or if you need a meeting with me, just set one up. I'll talk to you sooner. All right. Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.